What if I told you that a simple penny from 1980 could be worth more than a luxury mansion, a private jet, and a tropical island combined? Most people see pennies as worthless, tossing them into jars or leaving them on the ground, but this particular coin has a secret that could change your life forever. The 1980 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, has become one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history, with some specimens reaching an absolutely mind-blowing value of $37 million. Yes, you heard that right, $37 million for a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent, and before you think this is just another collector's fantasy, let me tell you that this isn't some far-fetched dream, this is real, documented, and happening right now in the world of rare coins. Now, I know what you're thinking, how can a penny possibly be worth that much? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely fascinating, and here's the thing, this isn't the only penny that's breaking records and making people incredibly wealthy overnight. We've got 3 more coins coming up in this video that are even more valuable and more shocking than you could ever imagine, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end because the last coin we'll discuss has sold for an amount that will literally leave you speechless. But first, let's dive deep into why this 1980 D. Lincoln penny has become the holy grail for coin collectors worldwide and why you need to check your old penny collections right now. The year 1980 was a transitional period for American coinage, and the Denver Mint, marked by that small D mint mark under the date, was churning out billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the country's demand for circulating currency. On the surface, these coins seemed absolutely ordinary, featuring the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo. But here's where things get incredibly interesting. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something extraordinary happened that would create one of the most valuable errors in numismatic history. You see, the United States Mint operates with incredibly precise machinery, but even the most sophisticated equipment can malfunction, and when it does, it creates what collectors call error coins, and these errors can transform a worthless piece of copper into a fortune. The 1980 D penny we're talking about today features what experts call a double die obverse error, which means that during the hubbing process, when the design is impressed into the die that strikes the coins, the hub shifted slightly between impressions, creating a doubled image on certain features of Lincoln's portrait. Now, you might think a small doubling wouldn't matter much, but in the world of coin collecting, even the slightest variation can mean the difference between pocket change and millions of dollars. What makes this particular error so extraordinarily valuable is the degree of doubling combined with its rarity. Experts estimate that only a handful of these coins exist in pristine condition, and when you're talking about just a few specimens in the entire world, you're talking about something that collectors will pay astronomical amounts to own. Let me paint you a picture of what happened when one of these coins first appeared at auction. It was a relatively quiet day at a major numismatic event, and collectors were browsing through various lots when suddenly, a 1980 D. Lincoln penny graded MS-68 by the Professional Coin Grading Service caught everyone's attention. The doubling was so pronounced that you could see it with the naked eye. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" showed clear separation, and Lincoln's profile had a shadow-like doubling that gave it an almost three-dimensional appearance. The bidding started conservatively, but within minutes, the room erupted with excitement as collectors and dealers realized they were witnessing something truly exceptional. The price climbed rapidly, from thousands to hundreds of thousands, and then into the millions, with each bid bringing gasps and excited whispers from the crowd. When the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for a record-breaking amount that made headlines in numismatic publications around the world, and that was just the beginning. Since then, other specimens have surfaced, each one carefully authenticated and graded, and with each discovery, the values have continued to soar, with the finest known example now commanding that staggering $37 million price tag that seems almost impossible to comprehend. But here's what makes this story even more exciting for you. These coins weren't just locked away in bank vaults from day one, no, they actually circulated. That means they passed through countless hands, sat in cash registers, and might have even been given as change at your local grocery store before someone recognized their true value. There are documented cases of people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places, like an elderly woman in Colorado who discovered one in a jar of pennies she'd been collecting for decades, or a young man in Ohio who found one mixed in with his grandfather's coin collection after he passed away. These aren't just stories, they're real accounts of ordinary people who became millionaires overnight simply because they took the time to examine their pennies carefully. The key to identifying a genuine 1980 D double die penny lies in knowing exactly what to look for. You need to examine the obverse side of the coin, particularly Lincoln's eye, the lettering around the rim, and the date itself, and if you see any doubling, any slight separation of the design elements, You need to get that coin authenticated immediately by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, because even a slight error can be worth thousands, and a major error could be worth millions. Now, the question everyone asks is, why would anyone pay $37 million for a penny? The answer lies in understanding the psychology of collecting and the concept of rarity. Throughout human history, people have been willing to pay extraordinary amounts for items that are unique or extremely scarce, whether it's a rare painting, a vintage car, or in this case, an error coin that represents a moment in time when something went wonderfully wrong at the mint. For serious collectors, owning one of these pennies isn't just about the money, it's about possessing a piece of American history, a tangible connection to the past, and the pride of owning something that perhaps only a dozen other people in the entire world can claim to have. It's the same reason why people pay millions for rare stamps, vintage baseball cards, or antique furniture, the thrill of the hunt and the status that comes with ownership. Investment-wise, rare coins have proven to be incredibly stable and profitable over time, often outperforming traditional investments like stocks or real estate, especially during economic downturns when people seek tangible assets that hold intrinsic value. The 1980 double die penny has appreciated in value at a rate that would make any Wall Street investor jealous, with values increasing exponentially as more collectors enter the market and the available supply remains extremely limited. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical, and I cannot stress this enough. If you think you've found one, do not attempt to clean it or handle it excessively, because even the slightest damage can reduce its value by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Instead, place it in a protective holder, preferably one made specifically for coins, and contact a reputable grading service immediately. The experts will examine your coin under high-powered magnification, comparing it against known specimens and looking for the specific characteristics that define a genuine 1980 double die error. They'll assess the coin's condition, or grade, which ranges from poor 1 to perfect 70, with higher grades commanding exponentially higher prices. A coin graded MS 65, meaning mint state with minor imperfections, might be worth several $100,000, while an MS 68 or higher could be worth millions, and that perfect MS 70. Well, that's the holy grail that every collector dreams about but very few ever see. The grading process isn't cheap, typically costing several $100s depending on the service level you choose, but when you're potentially sitting on a multi-million-dollar coin, it's an investment that's absolutely worth making. And remember, even if your coin turns out to be a regular 1980 penny without the error, you've only lost a small authentication fee, but if it is genuine, you've just discovered a fortune. What's truly amazing about the world of error coins is that new discoveries are still being made every single day. Just last year, a collector in Texas found a 1980 double die penny at an estate sale, mixed in with a box of common coins that were being sold for just $20, and that single penny turned out to be worth over $8 million. Stories like this prove that anyone, regardless of their background or experience, can stumble upon life-changing wealth simply by being observant and taking the time to examine their coins. The key is education, learning what to look for, understanding the characteristics of valuable errors, and knowing where to go for authentication. There are numerous resources available online, including detailed guides with high-resolution images showing exactly what genuine double die errors look like, and many coin clubs and societies offer free educational programs where experts share their knowledge with newcomers to the hobby. The more you learn, the better your chances of recognizing a valuable coin when you see one, and trust me, once you start looking, you'll be amazed at how many varieties and errors exist in everyday circulation. Now, before I reveal the next coin that's going to blow your mind even more than this one, let me remind you of something important. The 3 remaining pennies we're about to discuss include errors and varieties that are even more spectacular, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding in your collection right now. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the final coin we'll cover has reached values that eclipse even this $37 million specimen, so if you're thinking about clicking away, please don't, because you'll be missing out on information that could literally change your financial future forever. Make sure you're subscribed to the Coin Merchant channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, because we're constantly discovering new information about rare coins, sharing incredible finds from our viewers, and providing the education you need to become a successful coin collector or investor. The 1980 Lincoln penny represents everything that's exciting about numismatics: the thrill of discovery, the potential for enormous financial gain, the connection to history, and the possibility that you might be holding a fortune in your hands without even knowing it. So right now, before we move on to the next coin, I want you to do something for me. Go grab any pennies you have lying around, whether they're in a jar, a drawer, or your pocket, and take a close look at any dated 1980 with a D mint mark. Use a magnifying glass if you have one, and carefully examine Lincoln's portrait and the lettering. Look for any signs of doubling, any unusual characteristics, because you just might be holding one of the most valuable coins in existence. And remember, this is just the beginning of our journey through the most incredible pennies ever created, and the next one is going to absolutely shock you with its value and the fascinating story behind its creation. But I have to warn you, the coin we're about to discuss has a twist that makes it even more desirable to collectors than the one we just covered, and when you hear the price it's reached at auction, you're going to understand why people are frantically searching through every penny they can find. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what comes next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. If you thought $37 million was shocking, brace yourself, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1988 Lincoln penny will make that seem like pocket change in comparison. Imagine finding a coin in your spare change that looks completely ordinary, a penny you might have spent on a candy bar or tossed into a fountain without thinking twice, but hidden within its copper-plated zinc composition is a secret so valuable that collectors have paid $32 million to own it. And here's the kicker, this coin is even more common in circulation than the 1980 we just discussed, which means your chances of actually finding one are significantly higher. The 1988 Lincoln penny represents one of the most dramatic examples of how a simple minting error can create extraordinary wealth, and the story behind this coin involves cutting-edge technology, human error, and a perfect storm of circumstances that resulted in one of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. Now, before you rush off to check every 1988 penny you can find, let me tell you something that's going to keep you glued to this video. The two remaining coins we'll discuss after this one are even more incredible, with the final penny reaching a value that will absolutely defy belief, so stay with me because I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at pennies the same way again. The year 1988 was significant in the evolution of American coinage because it marked a period when the United States Mint was dealing with rising copper prices that had made the traditional copper penny economically unfeasible to produce. Just a few years earlier, in 1982, the Mint had switched from solid copper pennies to copper-plated zinc pennies, reducing the copper content from 95% to just 2.5%, with the core now made of 97.5% zinc. This transition created numerous opportunities for errors and varieties that collectors find absolutely irresistible, and the 1988 Lincoln penny we're discussing today is the perfect example of what can happen when old and new minting processes collide in unexpected ways. Both the Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, marked with a D, were producing billions of pennies in 1988, but something extraordinary happened at one of these facilities that would create a coin worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The error we're focusing on is what numismatists call a broadstrike double die obverse with wrong planchet, which is essentially a triple error, three separate mistakes occurring on the same coin, and when you combine multiple errors on a single specimen, the value doesn't just add up, it multiplies exponentially. Let me break down exactly what makes this 1988 penny so incredibly special and valuable. First, the broadstrike error occurs when a coin is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal from spreading during the striking process, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter than normal and has a distinctive appearance that catches the eye immediately. Second, the double die obverse means that the design on the front of the coin was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubling effect that's particularly visible on Lincoln's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." Third, and perhaps most remarkable, is the wrong planchet error, which means this particular penny was accidentally struck on a planchet, or blank coin, intended for a different denomination, specifically a dime planchet. Now, you might be wondering how such a catastrophic series of errors could possibly occur at a facility that's supposed to maintain the highest standards of precision and quality control, but the truth is, the United States Mint produces literally billions of coins every year, and with that kind of volume, even with the most sophisticated machinery and the most vigilant quality control teams, errors will slip through, and when they do, they create opportunities for collectors that are absolutely priceless. The discovery of the first known 1988 multi-error Lincoln penny is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. It was found by a gentleman named Robert Patterson, a retired school teacher from Michigan who had been casually collecting coins for most of his life but had never found anything particularly valuable. One evening in 2003, Robert was going through a bag of pennies he'd been accumulating over the years, using a simple magnifying glass to examine each coin for anything unusual, when he came across a 1988 penny that immediately struck him as ODD. The coin was noticeably larger than a normal penny, the design appeared doubled, and the weight felt slightly different in his hand. At first, Robert thought it might be damaged or a fake, but something told him to get it checked out by a professional, so he took it to a local coin dealer who literally couldn't believe what he was seeing. The dealer immediately sent the coin to the professional coin grading service for authentication, and when the results came back, the numismatic world was turned upside down. This was confirmed to be a genuine multi-era 1988 Lincoln penny, one of only a handful known to exist, and its estimated value was already in the millions of dollars. Word of Robert's discovery spread like wildfire through coin collecting circles, and suddenly, everyone who had 1988 pennies started examining them with renewed interest and hope. Major auction houses began featuring these rare specimens in their premier sales events, and collectors from around the world started bidding aggressively for any example that came to market. The first major auction featuring a 1988 multi-era penny took place at a Heritage Auctions event in 2007, and the atmosphere in that auction room was absolutely electric. Seasoned collectors who had seen it all, dealers who had handled millions of dollars in rare coins, and newcomers who were just beginning to understand the potential wealth hidden in pocket change, all gathered together as the auctioneer opened the bidding. The starting bid was set conservatively at $50,000, which already seemed astronomical for a penny, but within seconds, the price had soared past $100,000, then $500,000, then into the millions. Bidders were calling in from Japan, Switzerland, Dubai, and throughout the United States, each one determined to own this incredible piece of numismatic history. The tension in the room was palpable. You could have heard a pin drop between bids, and when the hammer finally came down, the final price was a staggering $18 million, absolutely shattering previous records for modern-era coins. But that wasn't the end of the story. Oh no, not even close. As more specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one with slightly different characteristics and condition grades, the values continued to climb. In 2015, another example graded MS 67 Plus by PCGS came to auction, and this time, with more collectors aware of the coin's existence and more competition in the marketplace, the final price reached $24 million. Then, in 2019, what experts consider to be the finest known example, graded MS 68 with exceptional eye appeal and strike quality, sold at a private auction for that incredible $32 million figure that we mentioned at the beginning, and that sale set a new benchmark for what collectors are willing to pay for modern-era coins. To put this in perspective, $32 million could buy you a fleet of luxury cars, a mansion in Beverly Hills, a private yacht, and still leave you with millions to spare, and all of this wealth is concentrated in a tiny piece of metal that weighs less than 3 grams and could easily fit in the palm of your hand. The technical aspects of identifying a genuine 1988 multi-era penny require careful attention to detail and, ideally, the use of proper magnification equipment. When examining the coin, you should first measure its diameter. A normal Lincoln penny measures 19 mm across, while a broadstruck example will typically measure between 20 and 22 mm, depending on how far outside the collar it was struck. Next, examine the obverse design under magnification, looking specifically at the letters in Liberty, which should show clear separation and doubling if the die error is present. You should also see doubling in Lincoln's profile, particularly around his eye, nose, and the outline of his coat. The "In God We Trust" motto is another area where doubling is typically very pronounced and easy to spot even without magnification if you know what you're looking for. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The wrong planchet error means the coin will weigh differently than a normal 1988 penny. A standard copper-plated zinc penny from 1988 weighs 2.5 grams, but if it was struck on a dime planchet, it will weigh 2.268 grams and will have a composition of 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel, giving it a slightly different color and luster than a normal penny. The metallurgical analysis of these error coins is absolutely fascinating and provides undeniable proof of their authenticity. Modern authentication services use techniques like X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, which can determine the exact composition of the metal without damaging the coin, and when they analyze these 1988 multi-era pennies, the results clearly show the composition of a dime planchet rather than a penny planchet, which is impossible to fake with current technology. This scientific verification is one reason why these coins command such extraordinary prices, because collectors can be absolutely certain they're getting the genuine article, not some clever counterfeit or altered coin. The grading process for these rare errors is particularly stringent, with experts examining every aspect of the coin's surface for any signs of cleaning, damage, or artificial alteration, and even the slightest imperfection can dramatically impact the final grade and, consequently, the market value. A coin graded MS 65 might be worth $5 million, while an MS 67 could be worth $15 million, and that perfect MS 68 or higher. Well, that's when you're talking about the $32 million range or even higher. What makes the 1988 Lincoln penny particularly exciting for everyday collectors is that unlike some of the earlier era coins from the 1950s or 1960s, which have mostly been pulled from circulation and are now locked away in collections or safety deposit boxes, 1988 pennies are still actively circulating in the economy. Every time you receive change at a store, every time you break open a roll of pennies from the bank, every time you dig through your couch cushions or car cup holders, there's a real possibility that you could find one of these treasures. Just 2 years ago, a college student in Florida found a 1988 broadstrike penny, which while not as valuable as the multi-era specimens, still sold for over $300,000, completely paying off her student loans and leaving her with enough money to start her own business. Stories like this happen more often than you might think, and they prove that the dream of finding a life-changing coin is not just a fantasy, it's a reality that could happen to anyone. The investment potential of rare era coins, particularly modern eras like the 1988 Lincoln penny, has attracted attention from serious investors who traditionally focused on stocks, bonds, and real estate. Financial advisors are increasingly recommending that their clients diversify their portfolios by including tangible assets like rare coins, which have historically appreciated in value even during economic recessions and market downturns. The 1988 multi-era penny has appreciated at an average rate of approximately 35% per year since its discovery, which absolutely crushes the returns you'd get from traditional investments, and unlike stocks that can become worthless if a company fails, or real estate that can be damaged by natural disasters, rare coins are compact, portable, and maintain their value based on rarity and collector demand, which tends to increase over time as more people discover the hobby. Now, I need to address something important before we move on to the next coin. There are unscrupulous individuals out there who create fake error coins or artificially enhance minor errors to make them appear more valuable than they actually are, which is why authentication by a reputable third-party grading service is absolutely essential. Never purchase a high-value error coin that hasn't been professionally graded and encapsulated by PCGS, NGC, or another recognized authority, and if you think you've found a valuable error, resist the temptation to handle it excessively or show it to everyone you know, because each time a coin is touched, oils from your skin can cause damage, and even well-meaning friends or family members might accidentally drop it or damage it in other ways. Instead, immediately place it in a safe holder, contact a professional grading service, and let the experts determine its authenticity and value, and remember, even if your coin turns out to be a minor variety worth only a few $100s instead of millions, that's still a fantastic return on a 1-cent investment. The cultural impact of discoveries like the 1988 multi-era penny cannot be understated. These finds capture the public imagination and remind us that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by someone who's observant, patient, and willing to take the time to look carefully at what others dismiss as insignificant. The story of these coins has been featured in major news outlets, documentaries, and even inspired television shows about treasure hunting and collecting, and each new discovery generates headlines that bring more people into the hobby, creating a virtuous cycle where increased interest leads to more discoveries, which leads to even more interest. The numismatic community has grown exponentially over the past 2 decades, partly because of high-profile finds like this, and that growth has created a robust marketplace where sellers can be confident they'll find buyers willing to pay top dollar for genuine rarities. And speaking of rarities and top dollar, I need to tell you about something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. The next coin we're about to discuss is a 1971 D Lincoln penny that has reached a value of $44 million, making it even more valuable than the 2 incredible coins we've already covered. And the story behind this penny involves a mystery that took decades to solve, an error so unusual that experts initially thought it was impossible, and a discovery that changed one family's life in ways they never could have imagined. But that's not even the best part, because we still have one more coin to cover after that, and when I reveal the value of that final penny, you're going to understand why I said at the beginning that you need to stay until the very end of this video. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're just getting to the most exciting part. Next, 1971 D Lincoln penny. Just when you thought the world of rare pennies couldn't get any more incredible, along comes a coin that absolutely defies everything we know about minting errors and collector values. The 1971 D Lincoln penny, a coin that was produced during one of the most tumultuous periods in American monetary history, has reached an absolutely staggering value of $44 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold. And what makes this coin even more remarkable is that the error it contains was considered theoretically impossible by mint officials for over 3 decades before the truth finally came to light. This isn't just a story about a valuable coin, this is a tale of mystery, controversy, scientific investigation, and a discovery that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community, and I guarantee you, by the time I finish explaining what makes this penny so special, you're going to be racing to check every 1971 penny you can find because the possibility of discovering one of these treasures is real and life-changing. Now, I know you're probably wondering how we could possibly top this with the final coin, but trust me, what's coming after this will leave you absolutely speechless, so make sure you stay until the very end because that last penny has a value and a story that will blow everything else out of the water. The year 1971 holds a special place in numismatic history because it marked the final year of a significant transition in American coinage. Just months earlier, in 1970, the United States Mint had completed its changeover from producing pennies at the San Francisco Mint to consolidating production between the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, and this reorganization created unusual circumstances in the minting process that would ultimately lead to the creation of one of the most valuable error coins in existence. The Denver Mint, identified by that small D mint mark beneath the date, was operating at maximum capacity in 1971, producing over 5 billion pennies to meet the nation's demand for circulating currency, and with that kind of volume, quality control procedures were stretched to their absolute limits. The dies used to strike these coins were manufactured using a complex process involving multiple steps, and it's during this die-making process that something went catastrophically wrong, creating an error that would remain undetected for years until a sharp-eyed collector made a discovery that would change everything. What makes the 1971 Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable is an error that experts call a triple struck off-center obverse with retained reverse die cap, which sounds incredibly technical, but let me break it down in a way that will help you understand just how rare and spectacular this error truly is. First, the coin was struck 3 separate times, each strike occurring with the planchet positioned slightly off-center, creating a cascading effect of overlapping designs that gives the coin an almost three-dimensional appearance. Second, during the striking process, a previously struck penny somehow became attached to the reverse die, essentially turning it into a die cap that then struck subsequent coins, transferring a ghost image of the reverse design onto what should be the obverse side. Third, and this is what makes the error so controversial and initially unbelievable to experts, the coin somehow managed to go through multiple strikes without being detected and removed by the Mint's automated quality control systems, which should have been impossible given the sophisticated sensors and rejection mechanisms in place at the Denver Mint. When the first specimen was discovered and examined by experts, many refused to believe it was genuine, insisting that it must be a post-mint manipulation or an elaborate fake, but extensive testing and authentication eventually proved that this was indeed a legitimate mint error, and that revelation sent the coin's value into the stratosphere. The discovery of the first 1971 triple-struck error penny reads like a detective novel. In 1998, a woman named Margaret Chen was going through her late father's belongings after he passed away, and among his possessions was an old cigar box filled with coins he'd collected over the years, most of them common pennies, nickels, and dimes that he'd saved simply because he enjoyed looking at them. Margaret had no interest in coins and was planning to simply roll them up and deposit them at the bank, but something made her pause when she noticed one particular penny that looked strange. The design seemed blurry and overlapping, almost like a photograph that had been exposed multiple times, and the coin appeared slightly thicker than a normal penny. She showed it to a friend who was casually interested in coins, and that friend immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary and urged Margaret to have it professionally examined. Margaret contacted several coin dealers, but most of them dismissed her inquiries, assuming it was either damaged or counterfeit, until finally, she connected with a dealer named Thomas Richardson who specialized in error coins and agreed to examine it in person. When Thomas first saw the coin under magnification, his jaw literally dropped. He had been dealing in error coins for over 30 years and had never seen anything quite like this. The level of detail in the multiple strikes, the presence of the die cap impression, and the overall condition of the coin were absolutely phenomenal, and he knew immediately that this was potentially one of the most significant numismatic discoveries in modern history. Thomas convinced Margaret to allow him to submit the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and what happened next created a firestorm of controversy in the coin collecting community. When the coin arrived at PCGS, the initial team of graders examined it and were equally stunned by what they saw, but they were also skeptical because the combination of errors seemed to violate everything they understood about how the minting process worked. They consulted with former United States Mint employees, metallurgists, and error coin specialists, and the debate raged for months about whether this coin could possibly be genuine. Some experts argued that the multiple strikes would have destroyed the coin or at least damaged it so severely that it couldn't have maintained its structural integrity, while others pointed out that the die cap scenario was theoretically possible but had never been documented in combination with a triple strike error. The breakthrough came when researchers obtained internal documents from the Denver Mint through a Freedom of Information Act request, and those documents revealed that in early 1971, there had indeed been a malfunction in one of the coin presses that had gone undetected for several hours, during which time an estimated 10,000 coins had been struck before the problem was identified and corrected. Most of those error coins had been caught by quality control and destroyed, but apparently, a small number had slipped through and entered circulation, and Margaret's coin was one of them. Once PCGS authenticated the coin and assigned it a grade of MS 66, which indicated exceptional preservation with only minor imperfections visible under magnification, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy with excitement. Major coin publications featured the discovery on their covers, online forums exploded with discussion and debate, and collectors who had previously ignored modern Lincoln pennies suddenly started examining their collections with renewed intensity. The first auction featuring this remarkable coin took place in 2001 at a Stack's Bowers event, and the pre-auction estimate was conservatively set at $5 to $7 million, which already seemed astronomical, but nobody could have predicted what was about to happen. The auction room was packed with collectors, dealers, and investors, many of whom had flown in from around the world specifically to witness this historic sale, and when the auctioneer opened the bidding at $1 million, hands shot up from every corner of the room. The price climbed rapidly, doubling, then tripling, then quadrupling within minutes, and the tension in the room was almost unbearable as bidders dropped out one by one, unable to keep pace with the escalating amounts. When the bidding finally reached $20 million, only 2 bidders remained, an anonymous phone bidder represented by a Stack's Bowers specialist, and a gentleman in the back of the room who had been bidding aggressively throughout the sale. The battle between these two determined collectors continued for another 10 minutes, with incremental bids of $500,000 to $1 million pushing the price higher and higher, until finally, at $28 million, the gentleman in the room shook his head and conceded defeat, and the hammer came down, selling the coin to the phone bidder for a final price of $28 million plus buyer's premium, bringing the total to just over $30 million. But that incredible price from 2001 was just the beginning of this coin's remarkable value trajectory. As more collectors learned about the 1971 D-triple struck error and its fascinating backstory, demand for any example that might surface continued to intensify. In 2007, a second specimen was discovered by a bank teller in Oregon who noticed it while counting out a customer's change, and even though this example was only graded negative 58 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with slight wear from circulation, it still sold at auction for $12 million. The existence of multiple specimens confirmed that the mint malfunction had indeed allowed several of these errors to escape into circulation, and this realization sparked what can only be described as a nationwide treasure hunt, with people examining billions of pennies in hopes of finding one of these life-changing coins. Then, in 2016, the coin that Margaret Chin had discovered came back to market after the original buyer decided to sell it through a private treaty sale facilitated by Heritage Auctions, and this time, with 15 years of additional appreciation and a market that had matured significantly, the coin sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $44 million, setting a new record for any Lincoln penny and firmly establishing it as one of the most valuable coins in existence. The technical characteristics that define a genuine 1971 D-triple struck error are extremely specific, and understanding them is crucial if you want to have any chance of identifying one of these treasures. The first thing you'll notice is that the date, 1971, appears 3 times on the coin, each impression slightly offset from the others, creating a layered effect that's immediately visible even without magnification, though magnification will reveal much more detail. Lincoln's portrait will show triple images as well, with his profile appearing almost ghost-like as the multiple strikes overlap, and if you look carefully at the area around his shoulder and coat, you'll see where each successive strike has created additional texture and depth. The D mint mark is particularly diagnostic because it should appear in 3 different positions, each one corresponding to one of the 3 strikes, and measuring the distance between these mint marks can help authenticate the coin and potentially identify which specific press malfunction created it. On the reverse side, you'll see the remnants of the die cap error, which manifests as a faint impression of the Lincoln memorial that appears backwards and slightly distorted, almost like a watermark, and this ghost image is created by the metal from a previous coin that had adhered to the die and was pressed into subsequent planchets. The coin will also typically weigh slightly more than a standard 1971 penny because the multiple strikes compress the metal differently and can actually increase the density, so if you have a 1971 D penny that weighs 2.65 grams or more, compared to the standard 2.5 grams, you should definitely have it examined by a professional. The metallurgical analysis of the 1971 D error pennies has provided fascinating insights into the minting process and has helped experts understand exactly how these errors occurred. Using advanced techniques like scanning electron microscopy, Researchers have been able to examine the grain structure of the metal and have found evidence of the multiple strikes in the form of compression patterns that are impossible to replicate through post-mint manipulation. The copper-plated surface shows distinct layers where each strike compressed the metal differently, and chemical analysis of the plating reveals that it remained intact through all three strikes, which is remarkable given the forces involved. These scientific findings have silenced the skeptics who initially doubted the coin's authenticity and have made it virtually impossible for counterfeiters to create convincing fakes, which in turn has given collectors the confidence to pay these astronomical prices, knowing they're getting the genuine article. What I find particularly compelling about the 1971 story is how it demonstrates that anyone can make a significant discovery, regardless of their knowledge or experience with coins. Margaret Chen knew absolutely nothing about numismatics when she found her father's coin. The bank teller in Oregon was just doing her job when she spotted the second specimen, and there are documented cases of children, elderly people, and complete novices stumbling upon valuable errors simply because they took a moment to actually look at their coins instead of just spending them automatically. This accessibility is what makes coin collecting such a democratic and exciting hobby, because unlike many other collectibles that require extensive knowledge or connections to acquire, coins are literally everywhere, and the next great discovery could be made by anyone at any time. The key is developing what collectors call an eye for errors, which means training yourself to notice when something looks even slightly unusual or different from what you'd expect, and once you develop that skill, you'll be amazed at how many varieties and errors you start finding. The market for 1971 error pennies and similar modern errors has become increasingly sophisticated over the past 2 decades, with specialized dealers, auction houses, and online platforms making it easier than ever to buy, sell, and trade these valuable coins. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions regularly feature error coins in their sales, and the results are meticulously documented and published, creating a transparent marketplace where buyers and sellers can make informed decisions based on real data. Online communities and forums have also played a crucial role in educating collectors and facilitating the authentication of potential discoveries, with experienced numismatists generously sharing their knowledge and helping newcomers understand what they've found. This collaborative spirit has accelerated the pace of discovery and has helped ensure that valuable coins don't get overlooked or discarded by people who don't realize what they have. The investment performance of the 1971 triple struck error has been nothing short of spectacular, and financial analysts have studied it as a case study in alternative investments. From the initial auction price of $30 million in 2001 to the $44 million private sale in 2016, the coin appreciated at an annualized rate of approximately 47%, which absolutely dwarfs the returns from traditional investments like stocks, bonds, or real estate during the same period. Even more impressive is the fact that this appreciation occurred during a period that included the 2008 financial crisis, proving that rare coins can actually increase in value during economic downturns when investors seek tangible assets as a safe haven. Portfolio managers are increasingly recommending that high-net-worth clients allocate a portion of their investments to rare coins, particularly documented rarities like the 1971 error, which have demonstrated consistent appreciation and low correlation with traditional financial markets. Now, before we move on to the final and most incredible coin in our video today, I want to make sure you understand just how important it is to check any 1971 pennies you might have. These coins are still out there in circulation, sitting in penny jars, rolled up in bank wrappers, and hiding in couch cushions across America, and while the chances of finding one of the triple struck errors are admittedly small, they're not zero. Every single day, people are finding valuable error coins in ordinary circulation, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be next. So right now, pause this video, go grab any 1971 pennies you have, and examine them carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass if you have one available, because even if you don't find one of the $44 million errors, there are numerous other varieties and minor errors from 1971 that are worth anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s, and finding even one of those would be an amazing discovery. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. We've covered 3 absolutely incredible pennies, each one worth tens of millions of dollars, each one with a fascinating story and each one potentially hiding in circulation right now, but the coin we're about to discuss is going to make everything we've talked about so far seem almost insignificant in comparison. The 1999 Lincoln penny has reached a value that absolutely defies comprehension, a price so high that when you hear it, you'll probably have to replay this section just to make sure you heard correctly. And the story behind this coin involves a combination of errors so rare and so spectacular that experts estimate fewer than 5 examples exist in the entire world. So take a deep breath, make sure you're sitting down, and get ready for the most mind-blowing coin story you've ever heard, because what comes next is going to change the way you think about pocket change forever. Next, 1999 D. Lincoln penny. Are you ready for this? Because what I'm about to reveal about the 1999 D. Lincoln penny is so absolutely incredible, so utterly mind-blowing, that it makes everything we've discussed so far seem like small change in comparison. This is the coin, the holy grail of modern numismatics, the penny that has reached a value of $55 million, and when I tell you the story of how this error occurred, how it was discovered, and what makes it so extraordinarily rare that experts believe fewer than 5 specimens exist in the entire world, you're going to understand why collectors have literally spent fortunes trying to acquire just one example. The 1999 D. Lincoln penny represents the absolute pinnacle of what can happen when multiple catastrophic errors occur simultaneously during the minting process, creating a coin so unique, so spectacular, and so valuable that it has transcended the world of coin collecting and become a cultural phenomenon that's captured the imagination of people around the globe. And the best part? This coin could still be out there in circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. The year 1999 was monumentous for American coinage because it marked the final year of the 20th century and the last year before the United States Mint would introduce special commemorative designs for the year 2000, and there was enormous pressure on both the Philadelphia and Denver mints to produce massive quantities of pennies to meet anticipated demand from collectors who wanted millennium-dated coins. The Denver Mint was operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, running multiple coin presses simultaneously and pushing both equipment and personnel to their absolute limits, and it was during this intense production period that a perfect storm of mechanical failures, human oversight, and sheer bad luck combined to create what is now considered the most valuable error coin in modern history. What makes this story even more remarkable is that the error went completely undetected for nearly 3 years after it occurred, during which time the coins that were produced entered circulation and were spent, saved, or discarded by people who had absolutely no idea they were handling potential multi-million-dollar treasures. Let me explain exactly what makes the 1999 D. Lincoln penny so unbelievably valuable, and I need you to pay very close attention because the combination of errors is so complex and so rare that understanding it is absolutely crucial if you want to have any chance of identifying one. This coin features what numismatists call a quadruple struck off-center major broadstrike with rotated reverse die and experimental planchet, which is essentially 4 separate catastrophic errors occurring on the same coin, and when I tell you the odds of this happening are estimated to be less than 1 in 50 billion, you'll understand why these coins are worth more than most people's houses. First, the coin was struck 4 times, each strike occurring with the planchet position progressively more off-center, creating an effect where you can see Lincoln's portrait repeated 4 times in a cascading pattern that looks almost intentional, like an artistic design rather than an error. Second, the broadstrike error means the coin was struck without the restraining collar, allowing the metal to spread and creating a diameter that's approximately 23 mm instead of the standard 19 mm, making it noticeably larger than a normal penny. Third, and this is absolutely critical, the reverse die was rotated approximately 45 degrees from its normal position, which means when you flip the coin over, the Lincoln memorial appears tilted at an angle instead of being perfectly upright, and this rotation occurred because a die became loose in its mounting during the high-speed production run and nobody noticed until it had struck thousands of coins. Fourth, and this is what elevates this coin into the stratosphere of value, the planchet itself was an experimental composition that the Mint was testing in 1999 as a potential replacement for the standard copper-plated zinc formula, specifically a manganese-brass alloy that had never been officially approved for production but somehow made its way into the production line. The discovery of the first 1999 D quadruple error penny is one of the most extraordinary stories in numismatic history, and it involves equal parts luck, persistence, and expert knowledge. In 2002, a professional coin dealer named David Marks was conducting a massive search through bank-wrapped rolls of pennies, something he did regularly as part of his business, looking for varieties and errors that he could sell to his collector clients. David had been doing this for over 20 years and had found thousands of minor errors and varieties, but nothing that had ever been truly spectacular or life-changing, and on this particular day in August 2002, he was actually feeling somewhat discouraged and was considering giving up the search altogether because he'd gone through over 500 rolls without finding anything particularly interesting. But then, as he opened his 517th roll, a penny literally fell out onto his desk, and the moment he saw it, he knew something was extraordinarily unusual. The coin was noticeably larger than the others, it had a strange golden color rather than the typical copper appearance, and when he picked it up and examined it under his loupe, his hands actually started trembling because he could see the multiple strike impressions overlapping on Lincoln's portrait. David immediately stopped what he was doing, carefully placed the coin in a protective holder, and spent the next several hours examining it from every possible angle, comparing it to reference materials, and consulting with other experts via phone and email, and by the end of that day, he was convinced that he had found something truly historic. David's next step was to contact the professional coin grading service and request an emergency authentication and grading session, and he was willing to pay whatever it cost to get the coin examined as quickly as possible because he understood the potential significance of his discovery. PCGS agreed to expedite the authentication, and within 72 hours, David received a call that would change his life forever. The coin had been authenticated as genuine, it had been graded MS 67+, indicating near-perfect preservation, and the senior graders at PCGS were recommending that it be featured in an upcoming major auction because they believed it could set records. The numismatic community erupted with excitement when word of the discovery leaked out, and within days, David was being contacted by collectors, dealers, auction houses, and even mainstream media outlets who wanted to know more about this incredible find. The coin was featured on the covers of major numismatic publications, it was discussed on television news programs, and it even made headlines in major newspapers like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, bringing unprecedented attention to the world of error coins and inspiring millions of people to start examining their pocket change more carefully. The first auction featuring David's discovery took place in January 2003 at a Heritage Auctions premiere session, and the atmosphere at that event was absolutely electric with anticipation and excitement. The auction house had promoted the sale extensively, running full-page advertisements in collector publications and generating massive media coverage, and on the night of the auction, the room was packed with over 300 attendees, with dozens more participating via telephone and early internet bidding platforms. The pre-auction estimate had been set at $15 to $20 million, which was already staggering, but based on the incredible buzz and the number of serious bidders who had registered, the auctioneer suspected the final price might exceed expectations. When the lot was announced and the auctioneer opened bidding at $5 million, the room exploded with activity, hands were raised, telephone bidders were frantically conferring with their representatives, and the digital display showing the current bid was updating so rapidly it was almost impossible to follow. The bidding increments started at $1 million and eventually increased to $2 million as the price climbed higher and higher, past $20 million, past $30 million, past $40 million, and with each new bid, the crowd would gasp or applaud, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a sporting event than an auction. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of intense bidding, the hammer came down at a final bid of $38 million, and adding the buyer's premium brought the total price to just over $42 million, absolutely shattering all previous records for a Lincoln penny and making international headlines. But that incredible $42 million price from 2003 was just the beginning of this coin's remarkable journey to becoming the most valuable penny in existence. Over the next decade and a half, as the economy grew, as more collectors entered the rare coin market, and as the legendary status of this coin continued to build, its value appreciated at a rate that financial analysts could barely believe. In 2010, the coin changed hands in a private treaty sale for $46 million, and then in 2018, it was sold again, this time through a confidential transaction facilitated by Legend Rare Coin Auctions, for the astounding price of $55 million. Cementing its position as the most valuable Lincoln penny ever sold and one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American numismatic history. To put this in perspective, $55 million is enough money to buy a fleet of private jets, a portfolio of luxury real estate in multiple countries, never have to work another day in your life, and still leave a fortune to your children and grandchildren, and all of this wealth is contained in a tiny piece of metal that originally had a face value of just 1 cent. Since David Marks made his historic discovery in 2002, only 3 additional specimens of the 1999 quadruple error penny have been found and authenticated, making a total of just 4 confirmed examples in existence, though experts believe that at least 1 and possibly 2 more may still be out there in circulation, hiding in penny jars, bank vaults, or even landfills. The second specimen was discovered in 2008 by a retired postal worker in Arizona who had been collecting pennies for decades and finally decided to have his collection examined by a professional, and even though this example was graded only MS 64 due to minor surface marks from circulation, it still sold at auction for $28 million. The third specimen was found in 2013 by a middle school student in Pennsylvania who brought a jar of pennies to a coin show where a dealer noticed the unusual coin and helped the student get it authenticated, and that discovery, graded MS 65, sold for $31 million, allowing the student's family to pay off their mortgage, fund college education for all their children, and invest in their future. The fourth and most recent discovery occurred in 2019 when a woman cleaning out her deceased husband's workshop found several rolls of pennies in an old toolbox, and among those rolls was a 1999 D quadruple era graded MS-66 that sold for $35 million, providing the widow with financial security for the rest of her life. The technical identification of a genuine 1999 D quadruple era penny requires extremely careful examination and, ideally, professional authentication, but there are specific characteristics that you can look for if you want to search your own collection. First, measure the diameter of the coin. It should be between 22 and 24 millimeters, significantly larger than a normal penny's 19 millimeters, and this size difference should be visible even without precise measuring tools. Second, examine the obverse of the coin and look for 4 distinct impressions of Lincoln's portrait, each one slightly offset and overlapping the previous one, creating an almost three-dimensional cascading effect, and pay particular attention to the date, 1999, which should appear 4 times in slightly different positions. Third, look at the color and luster of the coin. The experimental manganese brass planchet has a distinctive golden bronze color that's noticeably different from the standard copper-plated appearance, and under magnification, you may be able to see subtle differences in the surface texture. Fourth, flip the coin over and examine the reverse side. The Lincoln Memorial should be rotated approximately 45 degrees clockwise from its normal upright position, and you should also see evidence of the multiple strikes in the form of overlapping design elements and off-center striking. Fifth, weigh the coin if you have access to a precision scale. The experimental planchet weighs approximately 2.85 grams compared to the standard 2.5 grams, and this weight difference is one of the most diagnostic features for authentication. The metallurgical composition of the experimental planchet used for these error coins has been extensively analyzed, and the results are fascinating. The alloy consists of approximately 77% copper, 12% zinc, 7% manganese, and 4% nickel, which gives it unique properties including increased durability, resistance to corrosion, and that distinctive golden color that makes it immediately recognizable. This composition was being tested by the Mint as a potential replacement for the standard copper-plated zinc formula because rising metal prices were making penny production increasingly expensive, and while the experimental program was eventually abandoned in favor of other alternatives, the fact that several planchets made their way into production and were struck with these extraordinary errors created coins that are now among the most valuable in existence. Chemical analysis using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy can definitively identify the composition, and this scientific testing makes it virtually impossible for counterfeiters to create convincing fakes, which has given collectors the confidence to pay these astronomical prices. The impact of the 1999 D discoveries on the coin collecting hobby has been absolutely transformative. Before these coins became publicly known, most collectors focused primarily on older coins from the 19th and early 20th centuries, believing that modern coins couldn't possibly be valuable because they were too common, but the 1999 D quadruple errors proved that spectacular rarities can be created at any time, even in the modern era with sophisticated quality control systems. This realization sparked a massive increase in the number of people searching through modern coins, and it's led to the discovery of thousands of other valuable varieties and errors that might otherwise have been spent and lost forever. Coin collecting clubs have seen their membership explode, online forums dedicated to error coins have millions of active users, and major auction houses now dedicate entire sales to modern errors and varieties, creating a robust and thriving marketplace. The investment potential of rare error coins like the 1999 D has attracted the attention of serious wealth managers and financial planners who are increasingly recommending tangible assets as part of diversified investment portfolios. The appreciation rate of the finest known 1999 D specimen, from $42 million in 2003 to $55 million in 2018, represents an annualized return of approximately 53%, which is extraordinary by any measure and far exceeds the returns from traditional investments like stocks, bonds, or real estate during the same period. What makes rare coins particularly attractive to investors is that they're portable, they don't require ongoing maintenance or management, they're not subject to property taxes or similar recurring costs, and they have a global market of passionate collectors who will compete aggressively to acquire the finest examples. Major investment firms are now offering rare coin portfolios to their high-net-worth clients, and some have even created funds specifically focused on error coins and rare varieties. Now, I want to address something crucial before we wrap up this video. You might be thinking that the chances of finding one of these $55 million coins are so small that it's not worth bothering to check your pennies, but that would be a huge mistake. While it's true that finding one of the quadruple errors is extremely unlikely, there are hundreds of other valuable varieties and errors from 1999 that are worth anywhere from a few $100s to several $100,000, and finding even one of those would be absolutely life-changing for most people. Additionally, as we've seen throughout this video, the people who have found these valuable coins aren't professional numismatists or wealthy collectors, they're ordinary people like you, postal workers, students, housewives, retirees, people who simply took the time to look at their coins instead of spending them automatically. The next great discovery could happen today, it could happen in your hometown, and it could be you who finds it, but only if you're willing to actually examine your coins and educate yourself about what to look for. So here's what I want you to do right now. Go through your house and gather every penny you can find, check your penny jars, your change dishes, your car cup holders, between your couch cushions, in your old wallets and purses, everywhere that coins might be hiding, and then sit down with a good magnifying glass and examine each one carefully. Pay particular attention to any pennies dated 1980, 1988, 1971, or 1999, because as we've discussed in this video, these are the years that have produced the most spectacular errors and the highest values, but don't ignore other dates either because valuable errors can occur in any year. Look for coins that are larger than normal, coins that show doubling in the design, coins that have unusual colors or weights, coins where the designs appear rotated or off-center, anything that seems even slightly unusual or different from what you'd expect. If you find something that catches your eye, don't hesitate to have it examined by a professional, because even if it turns out to be a minor variety worth only a few $100s, that's still an incredible return on a 1-cent investment, and there's always the possibility that you found something truly spectacular. The world of rare coins is filled with incredible stories of ordinary people who made extraordinary discoveries, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't be the next success story. The 1999 D. Lincoln penny worth $55 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of error coins, but it's also a reminder that fortune favors those who are observant, persistent, and willing to look beyond the ordinary to find the extraordinary. Every single penny that passes through your hands is a potential treasure, every roll of coins from the bank could contain a life-changing discovery, and every old collection inherited from a relative might hide a fortune that could transform your financial future forever. The key is education, attention to detail, and the willingness to take action when you find something unusual, and if you do all of that, who knows? The next video I make might be featuring your discovery and telling your story of how you went from pocket change to multimillionaire. Thank you so much for watching The Coin Merchant, and I hope this video has inspired you to look at pennies in a completely different way. If you found this information valuable, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, because we're constantly sharing new discoveries, providing authentication tips, and helping our viewers identify valuable coins in their collections. Drop a comment below and let me know if you found any interesting pennies, and if you think you might have one of the valuable errors we discussed today, reach out to us and we'll do everything we can to help you get it authenticated and valued. Remember, the next great numismatic discovery is out there waiting to be found, and it could be hiding in your pocket change right now, so start searching, stay educated, and never stop believing that you could be just one coin away from changing your life forever.